So, do I think this watch is a copy of the Rolex Daytona? No, I don't. Do I think you should get one? Probably yes. Here's why you should get the Seiko Speedtimer SSC911P.
Since you've probably already looked up the specs, I won't labour through them, but in case you haven't, here's the key ones. It's got a 41.4mm case diameter, 45.5mm lug to lug, and a 21mm lug width. It's got a solar powered quartz chronograph movement, 100 meters of water resistance, and a sapphire crystal with anti-reflective on the inside. Some people have called this watch and its predecessor the SSC911P with the panda dial a Rolex Daytona homage, and I think that's a little unfair when you look at the general design of modern sports chronographs. They nearly all have the same aesthetic, 2 pushes and 3 subdials. There isn't a ton of room to manoeuvre, I would say, and yes, the panda aesthetic is famous to the Paul Newman Daytonas at the moment, but a lot of large luxury watchmakers are jumping into the panda look as well right now. Watch people generally don't like fashion watches, but there's certainly fashion in watches. So back to this one, it's moved away from the pure panda aesthetic with the update over the 813 model, and I have to say I love the look of this watch. I think the best test for a watch's looks is when you find yourself uncontrollably smiling when you put it on for the first time, and that's what's happened to me with this one. That brings me to what I love about this watch. The outer bezel is grey, although the 1 to 3 o'clock is a dark grey, so it creates a cool asymmetry which I love. Then you've got a dial which is a slightly metallic silver. It then has these thick applied markers that stand out from the dial and have a 3D look. You've got the black sub-dials and then literally the cherry on top, the red sub-seconds hand. It has relatively thin polished slab sides on the case with a brushed finish on top of the lug. There's no transitional bevel between the case sides and the lugs. The lugs are then blunted off, which gives some heft to the overall silhouette without adding size. Functionality-wise, it has your usual chronograph function. There's a slightly awkward date at 4:20 that's deeply recessed and a little hard to read, but to be honest, it's handy to have and doesn't really bother me on a chrono like this, which has a busy dial to begin with. It's a bit like a punch-hole camera on a smartphone. You very quickly stop noticing it. There's also this really cool battery reserve indicator, which is activated when you press the reset pusher. Moving over to the bracelet, I've got some mixed thoughts on it. My first impression when I picked it up was that it's a little cheap feeling. It's quite light and a little rattly. Kind of reminds me of the Fossil watch I had back in high school, but in reality it's probably quite a bit better than that. My understanding is it has solid links throughout. But I have to say this bracelet is bloody comfortable, more comfortable than the one on my Tudor Black Bay. And I think that comes from the quite compact milled clasp, which is the best part of the bracelet and higher quality than the rest of it. I've heard some say the bracelet doesn't suit the watch, particularly the end links, but to be honest, I think it works well. I enjoy the clean 3-link style, and while inconvenient, the 21mm lug width is really the perfect size for this watch case. Overall, the bracelet is fine, but I'd probably expect better as the Swiss competition at this price generally have better bracelets. I think that equation will change as the market retail price of the Seiko comes down. I get the sense that Seiko are trying to premiumize their brand by lifting their recommended retail, but their selling price to retailers must be much lower than that to enable some of the discounting I've seen. At the moment in Australia, you can get this watch for $820, so quite a bit less than the $1,100 recommended retail. Bracelet aside, the only other thing I can fault, and it's completely irrational really, is the solar quartz movement. When I decided to get this watch, that fact didn't bother me at all. Solar has the same elegance of a mechanical watch in that the watch powers itself. But now that I've been wearing the watch, I do get this nagging feeling that I wish I had a mechanical movement inside. I know it makes no sense. I think the solar quartz movement is perfect for this watch at this price point. But I'd love to see what Seiko could do with a version of this watch with a mechanical movement, just like the original 1969 Speedtimer. I'd happily pay more too. When I'm looking to buy a sports watch, there's 2 main areas it needs to check off. Firstly is aesthetics that I love, and secondly is a build that's going to stand the test of time. And usually that means a robust case, a sapphire crystal, and a reliable movement. This watch checks off all of those, and if you're after those as well, then I'd say go ahead and pull the trigger.